does it matter which points you're tapping? And why don't you take us through a sample?
Yeah, absolutely. So the original version of tapping was that Dr. Callahan had come up with was he called it thought field therapy, and he was came going from acupuncture, taking 8 major points, and but he would identify what the issue was for the person, and then decide, well, it should be these 3 points in this sequence. So he had different algorithms for different emotions. And so a lot of time was spent trying to figure out which points should I tap in which sequence. One of his first students was Gary Craig, and Gary had his degree in engineering from Stanford. So he's thinking like an engineer, how do I simplify this? And he said, okay, it only takes a moment to tap through all of these points.
Mm.
So rather than spending time trying to figure out which point to tap in which sequence, let me just tap all the points in order and get the same benefit without having to figure that out. So I may be tapping a point that isn't necessary, but there's no harm in it. It's not
Right.
like the body's going to say, "Oh, you tapped the wrong point, and now we're going to hold on to the distress."
Okay.
So that's why we tap these points in this order. However, there may be times where you only feel like tapping one point, and you may there have been times where I'm tapping along, and I'll go, "I'm just going to hang out here right now."
Mhm.
And it may be that, okay, this is the gallbladder meridian,
Mhm.
and it's associated with anger, so maybe I'm just angry, and maybe I don't really feel angry, but I just feel I feel drawn to tapping this point. So I always say to folks, go with your gut experience, and if you only tap one point, that's fine. So it can be very beneficial to tap through all of the points, but we actually don't have we do know from studies that tapping these particular meridian points is more effective than just tapping anywhere on the body. So they'll do studies with what are called sham points, with points that don't line up with the acupuncture system and the meridians as we know them. And we do not get the same effects.
Mhm.
So it does make a difference that we're tapping on these particular points, but whether or not we tap on all of the points or what order we tap on them doesn't seem to have that same effect. So
That is fantastic news because for anyone out there that just wants to play around with this and try it out, you're not going to do anything
you
hurtful.
can't really get it wrong.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
fantastic. Okay, so let's get into one.
Yeah. So I'm going to show you the basic version of EFT because the way I do it, it's an intuitive process and I say a lot of things. And if that's the first introduction for folks, they say, wow, it's really complicated. You have to say all these things. I'm not going to do that because I don't know what to say. Don't worry about that. So the very basic version is we identify what's going on for us. So it may be I feel really stressed right now. I'm really scared about some event that's coming up, or I'm really angry at Bob because Bob was such a jerk yesterday. So I identified the issue and then I rate it on a scale of 0 to 10. How upset am I? Um, it's an 8. Bob was really a jerk. It really messed up my day. It's an 8. And it's even better if we can identify how we're experiencing that. So I know I'm upset. I know it's innate. How do I know that? I feel this tightness in my chest, or I feel my shoulders are really tense, whatever it might be. So then I will take the fingertips of my index and middle finger and gently tap on the side of my opposite hand. And we do the setup statement where we say, even though I have this issue, I choose to love and accept myself. So I might say, even though I feel this stress, even though I'm angry at Bob, I choose to love and accept myself. And the reason we do this is because so often we're addicted to that 4 letter F word. I'm fine. And what we resist persists. So we're giving ourselves permission to acknowledge, you know what? I'm not entirely fine right now. So even though I'm not entirely fine, I choose to love and accept myself. And that creates an opening for us to an energetic opening to do this process. And then we'll go through these points. So right at the beginning of the eyebrow, and generally we tap a point between 5 and 10 times. It's not an exact science. It's not like if you tap too many times. So if you're saying a long phrase like, all this fear about the report that's due next week because I'm afraid my boss will yell at me if I get it wrong, I've just tapped more than 10 times. It's not like it's going to be wrong. So we repeat the phrase. this issue, this stress, this anger at Bob, this stress, right here at the corner of your eye socket,
Mm-hmm.
right under the middle of your eye, this stress, right under your nose, this stress, right under your lower lip, this stress, right here where your collarbones just about come together. There's a little bit of a U shape at the base of your throat.
Mm-hmm.
And the point is on either side, but you can also just make a fist and tap that whole area. And then you're covering both collarbone points. This stress. The next point is about 4 inches below your armpit. It's right about bra strap level. And I'm sure even the guys watching can figure out where that is. All this stress. And then finally, the top of the head. So with all of your fingertips, just tapping around the crown of your head. This stress. Then you take a deep breath and check in again. And so, whatever the issue is, the stress, the fear, the anger at Bob. And so, if it's an 8 before, sometimes it'll go from an 8 to a 0 like that. Sometimes it'll just go from an 8 to a 7.75. And to my thinking, even if it's a little bit of relief, that's better than nothing. I'm a little bit more, because when we're stressed out, our prefrontal cortex shuts down to some extent. So the more stress we have, the less clearly we can think. The less stress we have, the more clearly we can think. So any improvement is great. Sometimes it might feel like, wow, it's actually an 8.5 now because I'm more, it's not that tapping has caused it more. It's just that now I'm more aware of what was going on in there. And it was probably already an 8.5 or more. I'm just more aware of it now, but now I'm able to do something about it.
Right.
And then we can think more clearly. We make better choices, which has much, you know, all kinds of benefits for our lives.
So what I've noticed, and I wasn't even doing the full thing, is that I can still feel stimulation in those areas, and there's circulation, there's energy, there's movement.